You're listening to the Jets Factor on SoundCloud.com and the Grandstand Sports Network.
Third down snap. Sanchez to the end zone over Arrington, and touchdown, New York, Santonio Holmes.
Now, here's your host, CJ DeSimone.
What's going on, Jets Nation? Welcome to another edition of the Jets Factor podcast here on SoundCloud.com, the Grandstand Sports Network, and the UNB Sports Network. I'm your host, CJ the Painkiller DeSimone, and I'm joined, as always, by my partner in crime and my super-duper navigator, or as we like to call him, the Cuban navigator,
the
Carlos
Cuban navigator.
How you doing, Carlos?
You know, I'm doing all right. Well, I'm ready for the show. I think we're going to unveil something really special for the fans, the listeners, all two of you.
No, hopefully there's more than two of us. So, so as always, the Jets Factor podcast is brought to you by StatementGames.com. Take your fantasy game to the next level at StatementGames.com. Got a very awesome contest, which we're going to talk about. We've actually talked about this over the past couple shows, so if you've been keeping up, you probably already know about it. However, if you're new to the show, don't worry. CJ and Carlos got you. We're going to talk about it toward the end of the show and how you can get in on the sweepstakes to win a couple of tickets to New York Jets, New England Patriots, November 25th weekend. Yes, it's Thanksgiving weekend. Dude, we got a cool contest. We are going to let you guys know about it, so sit tight. I promise we'll give you all the details later on in the show. But first,
and if you lose, by the way, you could always blame Luis.
Yes, you could always blame Luis because homeboy, man, I got some stories to tell you. Scotty Lang and his relationship is kind of complicated, yo. So, but we're gonna talk to all of that. We're definitely gonna talk about all that. But real quick, Carlos, what I want to do before we get this show on the road, I do want to give a super duper huge shout out to the boys over at Gotham City Crew. Now, everybody wants to know why, and I'm going to tell you guys why. Well, when the show was undergoing a logo transformation, Gotham City Crew was very nice enough. Claudio and El Chapo over there, they do a solid job.
Do they hang out with Luis? No, I'm sorry.
No. You leave him out of it, all right? Don't worry. Luis's time is going to come. But right now, we're talking about the boys from Gotham City Crew, all right? And I tell you, they hooked us up with some really cool artwork. If you guys get the opportunity, check out at CNC Jets Factor on our media feed. It's really cool NYJ and graffiti. They let us use that for our temporary show logo for a couple of weeks. So I'm actually working to get them on the show to come and join us because they got a couple of things going on, especially with the green and white takeover of Jacksonville. When the Jets come down to play Jacksonville down here during the season, that's going to be awesome. So, we got a couple things in the works, but I definitely wanted to give them a mention because, they hooked us up when we really needed them the most. And, I can't say enough about those guys, couple class guys. They got really cool gear on their website. They got a great web page themselves where they put out some really cool articles and talk about the Jets themselves. And if you follow them on Facebook, you follow them on Instagram, follow them on Twitter, Claudio is always up to something. And El Chapo is always up to something. So definitely go and give them a follow and, just to be part of the green and white movement, as we all like to say here. So,
did I ever tell you the story about when I went to Jacksonville for a Jets game?
Oh, no. You definitely need to share us that.
Oh, my God. Well, it was an embarrassment. It was a long time ago. Chad Pennington was our quarterback. And he was playing against.
Well, it couldn't have been that bad. I mean, Chad was our quarterback.
We lost 42-0.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
I was in the seats by myself, a lonely Jets fan, surrounded by a sea of monstrous, drunk Jaguar fans, and we were getting killed from the opening bell. It was horrific. It was awful.
Are you
insane? It was one of the worst. It was one of the worst blowouts we've ever had, and I had the luxury of watching that debacle. And yeah, man, it was a bad experience. Almost got to some fights, got someone kicked out. It was,
no, God!
Yeah.
No, God, please, no!
The only good thing about that was we spent the morning over at I want to call it Jacksonville Landing, something like that. It's like not too far from the stadium where they had $3 margaritas. So me and Vicky were hitting that up all morning long. And thank goodness, too, because that game was awful. It was one of the worst blowouts we've ever had.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I vaguely remember that game. I think sometimes every once in a while I'll go through post-traumatic stress disorder of that game, specifically amongst others.
That one, what is it, the obviously the butt fumble game wasn't infamy. A lot of Patriots-Jets games actually were blowouts, so those as well.
Yeah,
it was not fun.
Just a mess. Well, all right. Well, in any event, as I try to pick everybody's spirits up, we have a very special surprise for you today on the show. All right. Yours truly got the opportunity to sit down with New York Daily News Jets beat writer extraordinaire Manish Mehta. He was nice enough to give me a few minutes of his time, and we got to have a very candid conversation, which I'm about to play for you. Now, I do want to warn you, the interview is a little bit long, to the tune of almost 50 minutes, so please try and stay engaged. Manish is actually a great person to talk to. I got a lot of stuff out of this interview, and Carlos and I will actually be talking about this interview once it finishes up. But first things first, I want to get this out to you. So here is CJ the Painkiller DeSimone talking to Mr. Manish Mehta. Hey, Jets Nation, CJ the Painkiller DeSimone here with a very special guest. I want everyone to put their hands together for New York Daily News Jets beat writer extraordinaire, Mr. Manish Mehta, to the show. Manish, welcome to the Jets Factor podcast. How are you this morning?
I'm good, CJ. Quite an introduction. I don't think I've ever had the crowd noise piped in, before an interview.
Hey, you deserve it. I have to say, I applaud a lot of the work that you do. I may at some points may not agree with what you put out there, but you know what? You're one of the better writers out there, and respect should be given, and credit should be given where it's deserved, and it's all yours, my friend.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. I know everyone's not going to agree because things aren't always rosy. But, look, if the Jets were winning Super Bowls left and right, I think everybody would be happier. But I get it. From a fan's perspective, I grew up a fan of not the Jets because I'm not from the area, but I grew up a fan, so I understand. But my role, as I've always said, is to report the good, the bad, the ugly. I'd love to report a lot more good than bad, and it seems, at least from my perspective right now, that the team is trending up. So hopefully there are a lot of encouraging signs and encouraging things to write about and talk about over the next several years. Certainly, I think that that will probably be the case, given what the team has done, bringing in some really good young players who I think can develop into some special talents.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree, and we all look forward to those brighter days ahead. This is probably the first time that our listeners are being able to actually hear your voice, get to hear the voice behind the column. So if you could, just for a moment, please tell us all about yourself.
Well, let's see. I used to think I was an incredible basketball player before I tore my ACL, so I always like to tell people that people that don't know you and read your stories or see you on Twitter, I think they get this idea that sports writers typically are these unathletic guys who can't play sports, and that's why they cover the sport, and they're critical of things even though they can't. They never played the sport, which makes me laugh. I mean, obviously, I'm not as good of an athlete as any of these guys. I'm not professional level, but I played throughout high school. I've played every sport imaginable: baseball, basketball, football, tennis, everything. So I kind of get the competitive aspect of all of this. And as I got older, I continued to play basketball, and I think I'm pretty good. But I tore my ACL once, and I almost re-tore it a second time. So I don't play sports anymore. As far as professionally, I wrote at the Star-Ledger for a lot of years before I got the job at the New York Daily News. My initial responsibilities were writing feature stories, enterprise stories. I covered 3 Olympics, going to Beijing and Athens, and Vancouver. Great experiences. You meet a lot of different types of people. I covered college basketball for many years, Seton Hall, Rutgers women when they were actually really good. But so I've gone through the March Madness experience, which has been tremendous. I've covered baseball. I covered a bunch of Yankees and Mets. I was kind of a backup Mets and Yankees writer earlier in my career, so I got an opportunity. Oh, wow. I was in the Yankees World Series locker room when they beat the Phillies, which was a little bit annoying for me, given that I'm from Philadelphia and grew up a Phillies fan. So that was an interesting experience, being in that locker room.
That must have been gut-wrenching for you.
Yeah, look, there were a lot of guys on that team, including Joe Girardi, who I really liked a lot. I've always said that, and just to bring that full circle now, getting the Jets job full-time with the New York Daily News in 2010, Rex's second season, I've always said that, I've got, through the years, a lot of good relationships with people in the organization, whether it be players, coaches, front office, just anybody who really works in the building. If you're around the team long enough, you get to know a lot of these people. And so you're not supposed to root as a reporter. You're supposed to be objective and unbiased. And, I try to do that as best as I can. And as you said at the top of the show, sometimes, that might rub people the wrong way. But I think in order to do my job properly and to give readers and fans an accurate portrayal of what's happening behind the scenes, I really do need to be detached, to that level. Now, that being said, again, there are a lot of people currently, in this organization who I really want to do well. I want these people to succeed because you get to know them. You get to know them on a personal level, on a human level, probably a better way of saying it. So, you want good things for them. I think that's just human nature, right? I mean, if you've got a soul, you probably want good people who do good things the right way to ultimately find success in whatever profession they have. So, again, I have a lot of tremendous relationships with people in the building who I want to see do well. So when the team isn't doing well, I don't particularly enjoy waking up in the morning and being critical, but I wouldn't be doing my job if I pretended that things were going great when they weren't. And I think the people, in fact, I know the people that I have great relationships with understand that. So, Again, I try to get as many sides as possible before I report a story that might be critical. And I understand that there's going to be backlash from fans sometimes. But, again, I try to be as fair as possible. And I've always said, of all the years that I've covered this team, and I was a backup writer covering the Jets back in Darrelle Revis's rookie year, frankly. The first time I ever spoke to Darrelle was a couple weeks after he got drafted. And I've always said, that some of my most enjoyable moments covering this team back, more than a decade, were in 2009 and 2010 when they had those great playoff runs. And, just seeing everybody in that building and in that locker room in a good mood and that's infectious, and again, I'm not a quote unquote fan of the team, but you can't help but enjoy some of their success. Again, I'm not a cheerleader. There's a dividing line between being a reporter for a media outlet and being an employee of the Jets, and the Jets have some good people on their website that produce really good content, but I think a lot of times fans kind of get that confused where they think that you're part of the team and you work for the team, so you should always paint the rosiest of pictures of the team. And that's not my job. That's not the job of someone who works for another outlet that covers the team. That is, however, the job of someone who's employed by the Jets. And again, there are some really good people that the Jets employ to put out good content on their website, but their jobs are different than my job. So I think a lot of that times, that kind of gets lost in the shuffle. And in this day and age, in social media and Twitter and and all of those new elements to this profession that didn't exist 15, 20 years ago, I think it gets a little bit clouded sometimes. So I guess that's a roundabout way of me saying, sometimes I understand the criticism, but again, my first responsibility is to report what's happening so that every fan and every reader kind of gets a true sense of what's going on inside the organization.
Well, I have to say, I applaud you for what you do, And in some ways, I envy you, but I know that must be a difficult task to have to go into that locker room after a loss and have to really ask some tough questions in which maybe it's at some point, you may or may not feel comfortable asking. And even, of course, then going into the locker room after a win where you want to ask like 50,000 questions because you're just as excited, for them as the team is excited over the win. So I can definitely kind of get the picture as to what a slippery slope you have to navigate on pretty much a daily basis in order to remain objective. And again, I do applaud you for it, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for you for what you do.
Well, thanks. I think it really boils down to the maturity level of both people. Me being one side of the discussion, and the player in terms of going into a locker room, after a loss or during a rough stretch. I think it really comes down to the maturity of the player. And not necessarily the age. Young players are all immature and can't handle criticism, and older players and veteran players are all mature and understand your job. I really just think it's the makeup of the person. For example, Josh McCown, this isn't a surprise, but Josh McCown is probably one of the most professional athletes I've ever covered in 20 years in covering sports. Well, win or loss, he understands what our jobs are, and he is as forthright as he can possibly be, in tough moments. There are younger players, Jordan Jenkins, same thing, extremely mature person. Forget about player, but extremely mature guy who owns up to, maybe some errors or mistakes or things he could have done better. Jamal Adams, another guy who's very responsible, very professional. He's only been in the league now for a year, but I think he understands fully what our jobs are and what his responsibility is as one of the burgeoning leaders of this organization. And those are the guys that you appreciate. For years, Nick Mangold filled that role. Kelvin Beachum, another guy on this team right now, who's just a pro's pro. Jermaine Kearse. There are a lot of guys in this, on this roster right now. And Todd Bowles. I mean, obviously it starts with Todd. Todd's the same way. Look, he will accept responsibility. He understands the job. Now, it's an emotional environment, especially after games. And I've always thought it was a unique dynamic. It's really unavoidable. But, look, you lose a tough game. You've got about a 10 to 15-minute grace period per NFL rules before reporters get in that locker room. And this is a high testosterone game, right? This is a highly emotional sport, and you might lose a tough game, you might get your butt kicked, whatever, but your emotions are riding high, and it's very difficult as a human being to turn those emotions off 10, 15, even 20 minutes after that game, and then have to explain what happened. I mean, look, I played sports my whole life. I'll play in a 30 and over pickup basketball game and be annoyed that we lost on a buzzer beater. The last thing I want to do is to sit down and explain exactly what happened. I mean, I know what happened. We screwed up, or we missed an assignment, or my teammate didn't do this, or I didn't do that. It's just difficult to explain in a rational, calm manner what happened, because that question is probably the most asked question in all of sports, not just football, but in all of sports after a loss to a losing player on a losing team. What happened? Well, I mean, what happened? You saw what happened. I don't need to explain it. That's why I do give a lot of credit to these guys who are mature enough to understand the dynamics and navigate it through it as best as they possibly can. Now, what I will say is that 24 hours later, or 48 hours later, whenever you get to talk to these guys about what had just happened in Sunday's game, they're much more thoughtful. It's just typical. You have for lack of a better phrase, a cooling down period, a period of reflection, and I would say almost to a man, these players that I've encountered in my career, including the guys currently on the team, are great when you get them even on a Wednesday. They've had enough time to kind of understand what happened and have their emotions in check, and are just better at giving you an idea of what truly happened. Because this is what I always tell players when I first meet them, is that I want to know what's happening on a particular play. I'm not asking you to throw a teammate or a coach under the bus, but if you see a play on TV, or if you're in the building like I am watching games, and you see Morris Claiborne, for example, another really terrific guy in terms of explaining what's happening or what happened on a particular play in a given game. If you see Claiborne get burned, or what you think was a play in which Claiborne got burned, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was his own coverage. Maybe he was passing off a receiver to a safety, and that safety blew the coverage. And I've had this explained to me in a number of different ways throughout the years. I remember one time I was talking to a player. It looked clearly, it was a primetime game, big play. I don't want to get into who it was, but big play. The guy got, the guy seemingly got beat on the play, and everybody on TV, including the commentators on TV, were blaming this particular player. And so, a few days go by, I end up talking to the player and talking to some other people, and it turns out that he was not the person responsible for a given assignment in which everyone thought he was responsible. Yeah, it was his own coverage. He had his particular area of the field. He did his job. Somebody else blew their coverage. He did not come out publicly and throw his teammate under the bus. Neither did anyone really, on that particular play, on that defense. But so what I say to players every time, I remember having a discussion really with Jamal Adams. Since I brought him up since he was a rookie last year, and I had a pretty frank discussion early on, which is like, look, I'm not here to take gratuitous shots if you make a mistake. What I do want to know is that if you got beat on a play, if you can, maybe it's not right after the game, but at some point, in the near future, a couple of days later, we go back into the locker room on Wednesday. If you could explain to me what happened, what was the play call. I'm not going to report what the play call was. I'm not going to divulge any secrets in that sense. But if you can just give me a general sense of what you were doing on a particular play in which it looked like it was your responsibility. If it was your responsibility, just tell me. I just want to get a sense of what's happening, because that way, the more that I know about a particular play, a big play in a game, the better I can report it and the more informed opinion I can have, because my job is a little bit different than it was when I started covering the team when I was the quote-unquote beat reporter. My job now is to be a columnist, and a columnist by definition is someone who gives their opinion, but I don't want to just throw out opinions because I feel like waking up and throwing out an opinion. I want to have an informed opinion based on conversations I've had with players and coaches and front office people about various issues. And when I get all that information, I feel really confident when I write a column with a strong opinion that I'm right, because I have a lot of information behind the scenes that I don't say I talked to player X or coach X or front office member X. I don't say that in my stories, but I don't write a story unless I know that the opinion is really based in fact because of those conversations I've had behind the scenes.
Wow, that's amazing, because if I feel like in the last 5 minutes you've just given us all like a lesson of journalism. You want to get all parts of the story before being able to write an objective piece on it. So that way, when you're writing on it and you're reporting it, you're giving the most informed explanation of said topic with pieces from all parties. So, and that's just wonderful. That's what something for me as a fan, who does this as a hobby, that's something that I enjoy, because I try to get the most out of every single piece that I read before making a decision on my own.
Yeah,
and
look,
that's where.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's where being an informed fan, helps, because it's like you don't just want to read one article and then all of a sudden have like an instant snap judgment, where unfortunately that's what seems to happen. I mean, take a look at social media. Social media can be an extremely tricky vehicle from time to time. So
yeah, it's an around-the-clock job, and I joke with my friends about it. This break after minicamp and before the start of training camp is really one of the few times, probably the best time for you to kind of unplug as a reporter, because, and I don't want to speak for other people that cover the team, but I know from just the way that I handle my business and the way that I approach my job, it's really an around-the-clock job. I get to the building, I'll cover. You don't really cover practice when the season starts. That's a myth. You watch them stretch for 20 minutes and do a couple individual drills, and then you're herded away back into the media room. That's why it's so cool from a reporter's perspective in training camp because you get to watch every practice from start to finish, and that's not an opportunity that you really have once the regular season begins. So during the regular season, you get a snapshot of practice, which is, again, not really that valuable, and then you get your 45 minutes or so in the locker room, and then you'll get to talk to Todd Bowles for 10 minutes on Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and after games, and you get a conference call on Monday after the game. So it's not that much time in the building, but if you establish relationships and really get to know a lot of the people associated with the organization, like, again, players, coaches, front office, then you're in contact with them constantly. You're in contact. Right. You don't have to be in the building. Most of my job, I always say this, most of my job occurs far away from the building. When I'm home, when I'm driving, when I'm sometimes when I'm on vacation, if I do take a vacation before the draft, all of my reporting, I would say not all of it, but a great deal of my reporting occurs outside of the building, outside the locker room, outside of one Jets drive. It's not anywhere close to that because I've established relationships through the years, and I think I've got a solid trust level, and I think that's really paramount in my line of work is that people have to trust you to give you information and know that they're not going to see it on Twitter 2 minutes later if they don't want to see it on Twitter. If it's just information that's used for my background, again, to formulate a solid opinion or to file away for something that I'm working on larger down the road, that trust level doesn't happen overnight. That takes a lot of time. And, again, just like any friendship or relationship, professional relationship that you have with people, it doesn't really stop just because you're not in the locker room. I mean, I think that's a big myth that people and again, I don't fault fans for that because, how would they really know what the dynamics of what my job is? But it's really around the clock. I'm really working in some form or fashion from the minute I wake up until the minute I go to bed. So it does take a lot of time. But if you're fully invested in it to do a thorough job, then I think that's really the only way you can do this job. Nice.
All right, Manish, I'm going to put you on the spot now. Now we're going to turn our attention to our beloved Gang Green here. I want you to take me through the mindset. What do you see reading the tea leaves for this New York Jets squad going into the 2018 campaign, going into training camp?
Well, I think there's a lot of promise. If you want me to fast forward to January to tell you if they're going to make the playoffs, I would say that there's probably a better than 50-50 shot that they will miss the playoffs again, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing if Sam Darnold gets sufficient playing time this season, which he will, and shows that he is headed down the right road, down the right path. Because if you look at some of these quarterbacks who were taken recently, I'll bring up Carson Wentz only because the Eagles won the Super Bowl. They were 7-9, I believe, his rookie season, and really they probably would have been 6-10. But the Cowboys played nobody in Week 17. They had everything wrapped up, and the Eagles won that game. So I don't think that was a gloom and doom scenario in Philly. This is a guy who was taken with the second overall pick, and then you saw him in his second season really take off to a level that made him a viable MVP candidate before he got hurt last season. And I'm not saying Sam Darnold's going to be an MVP candidate in 2019. What I am saying is that if you see enough encouraging signs, as Philly saw in Carson Wentz as a rookie, if you see similar things from Sam Darnold this year, I think as a Jets fan, as a member of the organization, as a teammate, coach, you will be exceedingly happy because 2019 could be a year where this kid takes off, maybe not to an MVP level, but really takes off and brings along everybody else so that the Jets are a viable playoff contender, a real playoff contender in 2019, because I really think they can be, given some of the young players, Darnold, Adams, May, Leonard Williams, all these guys that you know about, plus the fact that they're going to have a ridiculous amount of cap space again in free agency to add in this offseason. So I think if the quarterback shows promise and the two young safeties, Jamal Adams and Marcus May, continue down the path that I think that they're going to be going down, barring barring any kind of injury, of course. And Leonard Williams continues down his track, and we could talk about him later. But I think he's, if you can believe it, an undervalued player in this league, just because people look at his sack totals and don't think that he's that good of a player or not living up to expectations. I don't think that's true at all. But just given some of these other elements at play, I think if this team shows promise with Darnold at quarterback, whether that's 16 games or 10 games, 8 games, whatever it may be, it'll be a healthy sample size. If you see this team heading in the right direction with him at quarterback, then I think you've got a lot of things to look forward to in 2019. What that translates into in 2018 in terms of wins and losses, I don't know. I think in my initial prediction a few months ago, before he was drafted, I think I had the Jets at 9-7. I don't know. Maybe I'll tinker with that and make them closer to 8-8, 7-9. I'm not sure, but I think really this season's. I don't want to say it's all about Sam Darnold, but it's primarily going to be about him and his development and his ability to transition to the next level. Because I don't have to tell you this, CJ. They need to get that position solved. It's been such a difficult puzzle for them to solve, and you thought at different times, at different points in the past, that maybe they had solved it and they didn't. But I really think, based on what I had heard about this guy before he was drafted by the Jets, and what people in the building have told me about what they think he can become after seeing him this offseason, I think the future is extremely bright for this kid.
Wow, that's definitely encouraging news, because we've struggled at the quarterback position since Joe Namath. I mean, we've come and we've seen flashes of possibilities of quarterbacks actually being successful. Ken O'Brien, Chet Pennington, Vinny Testaverde, although he wasn't originally drafted by the Jets. We start going back and looking like, why can't we find a quarterback like that? And then we go and we take a look at our neighbors to the north in the Patriots, where, Tom Brady, 7th-round pick, all of a sudden comes out of nowhere, and now he's pretty much the best quarterback in the NFL. We take a look at a player like Drew Brees, who, initially got his start over in San Diego, all of a sudden goes to, New Orleans and, just absolutely spreads out like a wildfire. Aaron Rodgers, who gets to sit behind Brett Favre, and then, ends up taking over the throne, so to speak, for Brett Favre, and then he ends up stepping into the realm of greatness. So as a Jet fan, when you see this happening with other NFL clubs, we all scratch our heads, and it's like, why is it so hard for us to be able to draft a quarterback? And we've all got our fingers crossed for Sam Darnold, and we're hoping that if this kid is the real deal, he could be the Jets franchise quarterback for the next decade, and the future could look incredibly bright for Gang Green, considering the fact that the AFC East is still a little bit at a staggering point, though, in my opinion, where the Patriots still remain the gold standard, in my opinion, for the division. And until like Ric Flair used to say in wrestling, in order to be the man, you got to beat the man. And until one of these three teams in the division, whether it be us, whether it be Miami, whether it be Buffalo, goes up to New England and knocks them off, they're still going to continue to be the gold standard. Now, my question to you on this is the competition in the AFC East really that bad, or are the Patriots really that good and have been that good for so long?
Well, it's a combination of both. I don't think it's one or the other. Clearly, it doesn't hurt to have arguably the best quarterback in the history of the sport and arguably the best coach in the history of the sport, leading your franchise.
Right.
But you're right. It's an odd time. Somebody had asked me about the AFC East a couple of days ago and how I thought it would unfold this season. And, look, there's some tension between Brady and Belichick, and Julian Edelman's going to be gone for the first 4 games of the season, and Gronk is evidently fed up with Belichick's way of handling things. But ultimately, these are extremely talented players still playing at a very high level, and Brady, to me, it's so fascinating because I've been saying for 2 years now that I don't know how much longer he's going to hold on and how much better he's going to play. And then what happens? A few months ago, the last time we saw him play, he threw for 500 yards in the Super Bowl. So this guy is at the top of his game. He's the reigning MVP at 40 years old. He's going to be, 41, I think, next month, and he hasn't showed any signs of slippage. Now, could he fall off the cliff pretty quickly, much like Peyton Manning did? Even though he won a Super Bowl, he was clearly a shell of his former self in that season.
Yeah.
I guess it's possible, but until I see it, I'm not going to believe it. And it's interesting because the Dolphins, the Bills, and the Jets are all in kind of this transition phase, because you've got Ryan Tannehill, a quarterback, coming back after missing last season in Miami. I don't know if the the Dolphins are completely sold on whether he is the future. I think Adam Gase is a tremendous coach, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't know if he's on the hot seat. There are rumblings that maybe he's coaching for his job this season. And in Buffalo, I love Sean McDermott as a coach. I think he's a tremendous coach. But he is in a very similar situation as Todd Bowles, in that he is starting from scratch with a rookie quarterback in Josh Allen. So it's going to take time, I think, for Buffalo to kind of start heading in the right direction. I think they're a little bit, even though they've got the draft capital and some good young pieces on their team as well, I think that Sam Darnold is a better prospect than Josh Allen, or at least a guy who I think can be better quicker in the NFL. So I think it might take a little bit of time for Buffalo to kind of get headed in the right direction. Their best player is a 30-year-old running back, or a guy who's going to be 30, in LaShawn McCoy. So
yeah.
I don't think that the Dolphins, Jets, or Bills are ready in 2018 to dethrone the Patriots. But it's all predicated on what Brady gives you. Because if Brady plays at Brady-like levels, then it doesn't really matter that Julian Edelman's gone for 4 games. It probably wouldn't even matter if Gronk got hurt, because we've seen Brady light it up with Gronk out of the lineup. So it's all predicated on a 41-year-old quarterback, and until I see signs that he is eroding as a player, I can't, in good conscience, not think that the Patriots are still going to win the division in 2018. But look, it's a long season. You might see signs of decline toward the back end of 2018 with Brady. You might not, but if you do see some clear signs of aging, then I think that one of these other teams, the Jets, Dolphins, and Bills, I want to say the Jets, not because I cover the Jets. I want to say the Jets because I think that Darnold is going to be the best quarterback among Darnold, Tannehill, and Josh Allen. So that's why I want to say the Jets. But I don't think that any of those 3 teams are ready to win this division this season.
Yeah. Now, actually, just circling back to the Darnold subject, I have a theory, and I want to bounce this theory off of you to see if I'm even remotely in the ballpark. I have a theory that the New York Jets this season are going to take a page out of the New York Giants playbook, what they did with the bringing along of Eli Manning. When the Giants went out and signed Kurt Warner started the season, and then midway through the season, they turned the machine over to Eli Manning and let him finish out. Could you see a similar situation playing out this season with Sam Darnold if, and I do mean predicated on if, he has that full knowledge of the playbook, and Jeremy Bates and both he and Todd Bowles have enough confidence that they think the kid is ready, that they could inject him in the middle of the season and let him play it out?
I certainly think that's one of the plausible scenarios. I think at worst that's what's going to happen. I don't think there'll be a scenario where he'll take a redshirt season like Christian Hackenberg. I don't see that happening. I think, in fact, I know that if Darnold shows enough in training camp, but more importantly in preseason games, that he is ready to be the starter, then he will be the starter week 1 in Detroit on Monday night when they kick off the season. That's what they want to happen. That's what they think even now on in the first week of July. They think that is possible. It's not like a pipe dream in their minds. For the people that are making the decisions in the building, they believe that it's certainly within Sam Darnold's grasp to impress them enough on the field in preseason games, in the meeting rooms, where they feel comfortable to throw him in week 1. They feel that's possible. Now, seeing is believing. Maybe the kid's not ready yet. Maybe he does need a little bit more seasoning. And if he does need a little bit more seasoning, it's not a guarantee that Josh McCown would be the week 1 starter. In all likelihood, he would be. The wild card here is Teddy Bridgewater, because if Teddy Bridgewater impresses in the preseason and Sam Darnold still needs a little bit of work, then they would start Bridgewater. But it all depends, again, on is Bridgewater okay? Is he very good? Is he just, lights out, incredible, where you can't have him be on the bench week one? There's so many different variables. It's hard to definitively say right now what's going to happen, but they're certainly, at least my understanding is that they're certainly open to the possibility that Bridgewater could be the week one starter. That being said, if Bridgewater plays well and Darnold plays exceedingly well, then ideally the Jets would like to trade Teddy Bridgewater and get some kind of draft compensation back because, as you know, CJ, Bridgewater signed a one-year contract. He's clearly not going to be the future franchise quarterback for the Jets, but he's 26 years old, I believe. He has designs on being a starter, as he should be, because he has a pedigree as a first-round quarterback who has taken his team, or at least been part of a team that's gone to the playoffs. So if the Jets could flip him for a draft pick to a quarterback-needy team, maybe a team that suffers an injury at that position, which would be ironic because if you remember a couple years ago, that's exactly what the Eagles did when they traded Sam Bradford to the Vikings after Bridgewater got hurt, a week and a half before the season started. So if a scenario like that presents itself, I know the Jets would be amenable to trading Bridgewater if they get what they believe is adequate compensation, whether it's a player or a draft pick. Again, that all depends on how Bridgewater plays. That there's so many factors out of the Jets' control in terms of what happens on other teams. Is there another team out there that really has a design on going and being a viable Super Bowl contender that needs a backup quarterback who has really no backup plan as of right now? Perhaps that scenario presents itself and the Jets trade Bridgewater, or maybe they just hold on to all three guys, because it all depends on what they see out of Darnold, first and foremost, and then what they see out of Bridgewater, because they know what they have in McCown. And when you talk about a blueprint, how are these reps going to be divvied up in training camp and the preseason? It's going to be a very similar blueprint to what we saw last year, where at the early portion of training camp, you're going to see an extension of this off-season program where Josh McCown got the lion's share of first-team reps. But then when the preseason begins, you might see McCown, like you did a year ago, play the first series and then really take a back seat to the two other quarterbacks on the roster last year. It was Bryce Petty and Christian Hackenberg, and give those two guys, in this year's case, would obviously be Teddy Bridgewater and Sam Darnold, but give those guys an opportunity to show the coaching staff that they belong as the week one starter. And if one of those guys clearly shows that, one of those guys will be the starter. If not, like a year ago, then you'll see probably Josh McCown resurface and play that the early part of the fourth preseason game and be the week one starter. So again, there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of different variables, so it's difficult to, really impossible to say what's going to happen right now. But that's kind of how the Jets have laid it out, and that's going to be their plan of attack when training camp opens up in a few weeks.
Nice. So now, earlier in our interview, you talked about Leonard Williams. Now I'm going to ask you to shift gears to go to the defense. What are you seeing on the defensive side of the ball as a whole? First part of the question. And the second part of the question is, do you think that this defense can take a step forward and possibly crack a top 10?
Well, I love the back end of the defense. I really do. I don't want to minimize the fact that Marcus May missed off-season workouts. I mean, that's not something that a lot of people have discussed. It's kind of always been a given. Like Marcus May has an ankle injury. He underwent arthroscopic surgery. He'll be fine when the season starts, and hopefully he will be fine. Because if you remember, a year ago he missed most of the off-season program because of injury. And I don't take that lightly. To me, that's not insignificant. I know that the coaches have come out and said that Marcus May has gotten important mental reps, and okay, there's value in that. I don't want to completely marginalize the mental rep aspect of it, but nothing beats going out, and even if it's in shorts, nothing beats going out in practice and moving around with your teammates. So I don't think that's something that should be entirely dismissed. What's interesting is that Marcus May had a really good rookie season, even though he missed the off season. But you don't want to get into a habit of missing every off season. There's a reason why they have this off season program, even though they're not in pads, and even though Todd Bowles a lot of times likes to make fun of guys who not make fun of guys, but give perspective in terms of guys who have looked great because they're not actually in pads yet. I do think there is value in the off season program, so I don't want to diminish that part of Marcus May, but I do think that if he is fully healthy, that both he and Jamal Adams can really anchor the back end of this defense. Adding Trumaine Johnson, to me, was a very important signing. I don't want to pretend that he's Darrelle Revis in his prime, because he is not Darrelle Revis in his prime. He's a very good football player, an upgrade to that cornerback room from a year ago. That's what matters to me. He's got a familiarity with Denard Wilson, who coached him with the Rams, and I think Denard Wilson's opinion on Trumaine Johnson carried a lot of weight when ultimately determining that they were going to sign this guy, and not only sign him, but give him a boatload of money, because he's getting paid like an all-pro cornerback. And if you're going to be objective and fair about it, he has never been an all-pro cornerback. He's never been a Pro Bowl cornerback. He is, however, an improvement upon what they had last year. And I do think there's a domino effect. I'd asked Denard Wilson about this at the end of minicamp, about whether Trumaine Johnson's arrival will benefit Mo Claiborne, because Claiborne's going to be shifted over now and not really being asked to cover quote-unquote number one wide receivers. He's going to be on number two guys, which in theory should benefit him. As Denard Wilson kind of downplayed that a little bit, I still believe that there is indeed a ripple effect where your entire cornerback slotting becomes better, because now you have Trumaine Johnson on one end, you've got Mo Claiborne on the other, you get Buster Screen moved into the slot as the nickel corner, where I think he has tremendous value, much more value probably in that role than he did on the outside the past couple years. So I do think that trio of cornerbacks, coupled with Adams and May, makes this a very strong secondary, and it's a, frankly, I'm not saying they're making the playoffs, but it's a playoff caliber secondary. The big issue, and this isn't a surprise if you follow the Jets closely, the big issue is getting consistent pressure on the quarterback from the edge. They have not had an edge pass rusher in, a decade, since John Abraham, right?
You took the words right out of my mouth, my friend.
Right. You haven't had that reliable presence. And Jordan Jenkins, to me, is an important piece. He's a valuable piece. He does a lot of the dirty work. He's a good he sets the edge really well against the run, and that's an area that doesn't get a lot of the glamour, but it's a pivotal part. He did show some signs last year of getting to the quarterback a little bit more, and I know that he's working on that element of his game. I just don't think you're ever going to see Jordan Jenkins turn into a double-digit sack guy. I don't think that's possible. So where are you going to generate your sacks from? Where are you going to generate your pressure? It's going to be on the interior, so you're going to need Leonard Williams to get a little bit of help, whether it's from Henry Anderson, whether it's from Nathan Shepard. Somewhere they're going to need to unburden or take some of the pressure and the heat off of Leonard Williams, because if Leonard Williams is consistently getting double-teamed, it's going to make it extremely difficult for him to get home, because I do think that Leonard Williams is still a extremely high upside player. He got a lot of pressure and disrupted the quarterback last year, more so than people realize and people know, because they just look at the low sack total and think, hey, what happened? Now, what I will say is that I know that his wrist injury that he suffered in the preseason last year really bothered him for about the first 6 weeks or so. So the fact that he played through it, didn't really complain or whine about it, didn't make it overly big of an issue, I think speaks to the type of character that he has. But I know that was a significant injury for him that he kind of gutted out. He played much better in the second half of the season, but again, he needs to get home more, and the only way he can get home more is if he gets more help. And I just don't know where the help is going to come from on the edge, because edge pass rushers don't grow on trees. You rarely find an edge pass rusher who is a difference maker in the mid-rounds in the draft. You usually get them high in the draft. You rarely get them in free agency, because the teams that have them don't let them go. And that's why you saw DeMarcus Lawrence in Dallas. People had said before free agency, well, why don't the Jets target this guy, get this guy? And it was a foregone conclusion that he wasn't going anywhere. He was going to get franchised by Dallas, and ultimately he'll sign a long-term deal with them. So that's such a pivotal area, a big hole, for lack of a better phrase, that I don't know is going to be filled. Can the Jets make a deal? I don't know. I know for a fact that the Jets tried to get Barkevious Mingo, who was really an underwhelming first-round pick from Cleveland a few years ago. I think I want to say he was this number 6 pick overall. He was certainly a top 10 pick, supposed to be an edge pass rusher in this league. Really didn't develop into that, but he has the pedigree, and the Jets were extremely interested in getting him. They made him an offer. He ultimately went to Seattle. So, they're trying. I'm not saying that they're not trying to to find an answer to this, but I just don't think there's a miracle cure out there. And then when you look at the middle of the defense, I think that's going to be an interesting part because you lose Demario Davis, who was a reliable player, a player with flaws, but a reliable player. He played every snap last year. The quarterback of that defense, that's really going to fall on Darren Lee's shoulders this year. He's going to be the primary play caller, not Avery Williamson. And Williamson, to me, is an incredible player against the run. The guy does not miss tackles. If he is anywhere in the area, he's going to make the tackle. He's just had some deficiencies, at least in Tennessee's eyes, in pass coverage. And that's why I think a guy like Kevin Pierre-Louis, who the Jets signed coming out of Kansas City, I think that guy is going to have a meaningful role in pass coverage. And you saw that if you watched OTAs, if you watched practice. This guy made some plays. He really made an impression on me for sure. So he's a sneaky player who I think can make a valuable contribution. So in terms of the defense as a whole, there's certainly promising signs. But again, if you have a great secondary, it doesn't really matter if the quarterback has 4 or 5 seconds to throw the ball. So they're going to have to get consistent pressure on quarterbacks if they're going to take advantage of the talent that they have on the back end.
Yeah, that's always been the biggest Jets' Achilles heel, is just not being able to generate that pass rush and to create a miserable situation for the opposing team's signal callers. All right, one final question for you. I know your time is limited with me. Overall, 30,000-foot view of the team, both sides, offense, actually all three sides, offense, defense, special teams. Does this team take a solid step forward, and does 2019 become brighter for this team, or are we still pasted with the word if?
I think a solid contribution, I should say, from the younger players. I think they're going to take a step forward. Record-wise, they're going to get more than 5 wins. I would be surprised if they didn't improve upon the 5-11 seasons that they had each of the past 2 years. I don't think they're going to make the postseason. I think they could make it interesting, depending on how things shake out in the first half of the season. But they've got the right players in the room to make that step on the field with Jamal Adams, Marcus May, Leonard Williams, Sam Darnold now on offense, Robbie Anderson, if he can keep his head on straight and do the right things. I think he's got ability to be a cornerstone piece moving forward. They just need more difference makers, I think, specifically on offense in 2019 and beyond. They certainly need to address the edge pass rushing issue moving forward. But I think they're going to head in the right direction. We didn't even talk about Quincy Enunwa, who I think is an extremely talented young player who, I think will take off and continue what he did in 2016. So there's a lot of encouraging signs. Barring injury, I think this team is headed in the right direction with McCagnon and Bowles. Both these guys are signed through 2020, which doesn't necessarily mean much, but I do think that the ownership, Christopher Johnson and Woody Johnson, have done the proper things in terms of trying to set a proper foundation to finally get this thing headed in the right direction and not be too reactionary to some of these 5-11 seasons, because 5-11 stinks, right? I mean, who's going to sugarcoat that?
Yeah, of course.
5-11 is not good, but I think you need to take a broader look at this and look at what the Jets are actually building here, what they have done to this point. They have had missteps. It hasn't been perfect, but I think they've made enough right steps to head in the right direction. And that's why if I were a Jets fan, I would be extremely encouraged. I know they haven't made the playoffs since 2010, and that's annoying. It's irritating as you see rivals like the Patriots continue to flourish. But I do think that brighter days are ahead. I think that maybe they could surprise and be in the playoff hunt in 2018. I don't know, but I can say for certainty, barring injury, this team is going to be a real playoff threat from 2019 on with this core group of young players.
Nice. All right, Manish, this was just a completely fascinating interview. I really enjoyed speaking to you, and you have an open invitation to come back on the show anytime you would like. But first, what I would like for you to do is give out your social media information so our fans can interact with you and reach out to you.
Okay. My Twitter handle is my first initial last name, so it's MMEHTA NYDN, stands for New York Daily News. And forgive me if I don't respond to you over the next couple of weeks. I'm going to try to lay low until training camp begins. But I always enjoy interaction with fans, who are asking like interesting questions and who want to know kind of what's happening. And I appreciate the feedback. I appreciate the interaction. I do understand, as we said at the start of the interview, I understand fans' frustration. I totally get it. But my job, again, is to report everything that happens that's good and maybe not so good. But, just like everybody else, everyone's in a better mood when things are going well and the team is winning. And I certainly believe that they've got the right people in the organization, in the locker room, to get this thing turned around and ultimately go to where every Jet fan has wanted to go really for almost 50 years now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I cannot applaud you enough for the fabulous job that you're doing over there. Continue to keep putting out that great content and, keep fighting the good fight, my friend.
All right, CJ, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
You got it, Manish. Thank you so much for your time. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Manish Mehta from the New York Daily News Jets beat reporter. I thank him again for giving me a few minutes of his time to be able to come on in and communicate with me and, just share with me some time talking about the Jets in this upcoming season. Carlos and I are going to be giving our critique a little bit on this interview, but first, we do want to say this segment is brought to you by Big C's Barbershop. When you need an old-school cut, Big C's is the place to go for all your grooming needs. Call 772, area code 663-4440, or search up Big C's Barbershop on Google+. You could also book an appointment on Facebook. Big C's Barbershop is the place to be. Go check out my boy Big C. His name is Cesar Gomez. All right, when you go in there, tell him you heard about the shop on the Jets Factor podcast, and he will hook you up. Big C's Barbershop in Roseland, Florida. All right, so everyone got the opportunity to listen to the really fascinating interview with Manish Mehta. I got to say one thing, interviewing him was definitely not what I had expected. The man is very humble, very knowledgeable. I thought that there was a ton of great information that I got out of this interview. So, it's for me, the entire interview encapsulated everything that I wanted to know about what's going into training camp. And plus, on top of it, we got to kind of see a little bit of the humanistic side of Manish himself. So, we're, again, just trying to piece things together as to what exactly we're going to need to see or what we want to see coming into training camp. So, it's one of the few things that I tell you, when I really take a look at this interview as a whole, again, we get to see the humanistic side of Manish, him being a former athlete, or him going through ACL surgery himself. But not only that, just the different types of relationships that we have in regards to the in regards to. I'm trying to piece together the words that I want to say. There's about 5 different things that I want to say all at once. But in a nutshell, okay, you get to see what he's gone through. He's been an athlete. He knows what entails with the injuries. He knows how horrific the injuries are. He can relate to the professional athlete. He's got a ton of very good relationships with players and so on and so forth. Plus, when he's doing his reporting, he's going through several different sources. It's not just talking to one person, talking to another person, or talking to 2 or 3 people. He's talking to maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 people. I mean, you heard it from the man's mouth himself that, his job starts as soon as he wakes up in the morning and doesn't end until he puts his head on the pillow at night. And this is every day. So, I mean, the man's going out there. He's doing his research. And look, I'm going to be the first one to comment. I may not always agree with some of the stuff that he puts out there in his columns, or may not agree with his point of view. But you know what? I respect the man for what he does. I respect the opinion that he has. I respect the fact that, all right, ladies and gentlemen, sorry about that for just a little bit. Had a little bit of technical difficulty, but as I'm going to try to resume the thought that I had, he's been through. He's been through the mill. He's paid his dues going through it. I mean, one of the fascinating things that I felt was I had no idea he was a backup writer for the Mets or the Yankees, which I thought was really cool. Had no idea he's from Philly. Okay, so obviously he was probably pretty happy when the Eagles won the Super Bowl. Also, again, putting Carson Wentz and him talking about the Eagles in the conversation. So, Carlos, what are your thoughts? Or am I just rambling here?
I think you're just kind of rambling, but that's okay. So I think the big thing.
Appreciate it.
I think for me, the big thing, and I wish I was able to kind of talk to him a little bit too, was to see kind of the transformation over several years. Where, like, for a while we were pretty critical of Manish. Let's not lie, right? Like, everybody was. It kind of felt like he was trolling Jets fans and the blogosphere in general. And he's really kind of done a 180 and embraced that side, which I give him credit for. I wish he could have gotten to that a little bit. What made him kind of change his mind there? Because, for a while he definitely was, I would say, almost screwing with half of us sometimes. That now he seems to have embraced the fans and things like that.
Well, I'm definitely going to step up here because, I got to say, just from talking to the guy, from having a few minutes to speak to him, I can totally see the angle where you're coming from with like, maybe in the past, he's been sending out these like cryptic messages on like social media, but you know what? Now I kind of understand a little bit why. Whereas I don't think from the fan perspective that people really understand what his role and responsibility is as a writer, as a journalist, to be able to communicate. And let's face it, like I just got finished alluding to before, I may not have agreed with all of his takes, in the past and stuff like that, but you know what? The man's been dead on. So I can't really, I can't discount that. I can't discount. There we go. I can't discount that fact. That his predictions or his statements or whatever have not been true. So it's not as if he's pulling this stuff out of his ass. I'm going to tell you, you heard it from the interview himself. He's got a lot of relationships with people within the organization, relationships with players. And dude, I could just imagine, and that was something I made it a point during the interview to ask. But I mean, really, like, could you just imagine having to be that guy going into the Jets locker room to do, interviews after like a tough loss? Okay,
there's like 20 beat writers. I get what you're saying, but like, there's plenty of other people that do that. So I give them credit. That's great. I noticed that there was a change, right? There absolutely was a change. You can't tell me there wasn't, and it was calculated. And it's a good point. I giving him credit more so than anything else. But it happened. Like, there was a time where it was very animous between Jets Nation in general, right, and Manish in particular. But I think that's kind of come around, and he went out of his way to embrace some of the folks like us that take the time to do this right or whatever. And I give him credit for that. That's all I'm saying. Like, but there absolutely was a change.
Yeah, I agree because I'm going to be honest with you. When I reached out to him via email to give him an invite to come on the show, I really thought that he was going to shoot me down or like blow me off. But when he actually responded to me and everything, and he was he sounded really excited to come on the show. Like, that made me even more excited. It was like, oh my God! I was like, dude, I have to keep from being a fanboy on this interview. So I have to try to be professional. And here I am. Like, there at some points during the interview, and yes, I know I'm going to sound like a girl.
Zero, you didn't do that great at that. Just so you know.
What's that? What do you mean?
I said you didn't do that great at that. Sometimes it kind of came out. I'm just saying.
So I mean, there were some points during the interview where here I am, I'm sitting here and he's speaking and he's going through all of this, and I'm just sitting back in awe, just listening to him speak, and I had tears in my eyes that I could not believe I was actually.
Tears in your eyes? Come on, man.
I am not even kidding. I am not even kidding, dude. Listen, so you can call me a wuss all you want. You know what? I don't care. It was freaking cool. And I'm like, you know what? I mean, at the end of the day, he's totally somebody that I would just I would go and have a beer with and go shoot pool and just shoot the shit with. You know, what do you think?
Yeah. I thought I was going to have to wipe the stains off your mouth, honestly. That's all I'm going to say. No, but you did a great job. I'm just messing around. I'm just messing around. You did a good job. I'm sure we'll be glad to come back, and we'll talk some more later. During the
Manish, when you listen to this, I told you got the open invitation to come on in. Hopefully you'll get to speak to both of us this time, you know, on the show, which will actually be pretty cool. So, definitely, shout out to Manish Mehta. Follow him on Twitter. Go check out I believe he still does the Jet Stream. Am I correct? I think so, right? He still does the blog called the Jet Stream?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I have no idea.
Dang, so much reassurance, man. What the hell?
I have no idea. I don't listen to that. So anyway, speaking of stains, I wanted to bring up, let's get off the Jets a little bit here. So we went to watch the debut of The Wasp and Ant-Man, right, yesterday. And one of the stains on the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe is Michael Douglas's horrible acting. But can we just admit that? It is a stain on the MCU. It is a stain on Marvel itself. He's abysmal as an actor. I will just come out and say it. You could have gotten the Crypt Keeper to play Hank Pym, and it would have been a better job.
The Crypt Keeper. How does that dynamic go? I've got you, Scott. Don't worry about your suit. I'll take care of your suit.
Isn't that basically what? I think we uncovered the mystery of how the Avengers are going to defeat Thanos, but they're just going to unleash Michael Douglas's horrific acting on him, and he's going to take the gun, take the Infinity Gauntlet, shove it down his throat, and blow himself up. Stop it, please.
No.
Please stop it.
No. If there is anything worse that Thanos is going to do in Avengers 4, all right. So listen, before we go on, if there's any of you that have not seen Avengers: Infinity War, I'm sorry, you're going to have to stop the podcast here, go watch it, and then pick it up from this point. But I'm sure that 99.9% of America has already seen the Avengers: Infinity War, so y'all know what happens at the end. All right, but we are going to talk about this. But, dude, I'm telling you, if there are two people that are going to kill Thanos, okay, two. I got my theories. We were talking about this last night on the car ride home, just cracking up hysterical, and we do have a funny story. Man, if there's anybody who I'd love to see kill Thanos, it'd be frickin' Stan Lee. Just out of the blue. He's smacking around the Avengers. He's throwing Black Widow across the room. Frickin' Tony Stark, he, smashes him so hard his helmet explodes and stuff, and he just goes flying or whatever. It's just absolutely just ripping through the Avengers. And all I could see is just like Thanos has got the Infinity Gauntlet. He's wrapped around Captain America's head, and he's trying to squeeze his skull, I will crush you. And then, dude, just Stan Lee just comes out of nowhere and either hits him in the back of the head or stabs him with a spear or something, going, I had no idea this could do that.
I like that one, but I like that chasing him around the multiverse in a lowrider going, what's up, until he decides to kill himself. He just annoys him to death. That is where Luis comes into play. He just chases him around, yo, let me tell you the story about my homeboy Scott Lang. And Thanos is like, dude, I can't even escape. I'm going to multiple universes. I'm going back in time, and here's fucking Luis in a lowrider trying to tell me about this love story. I'm going to kill myself now. I'm done. It wasn't worth it. I'm out. I'm not if I have to listen to this motherfucker. The superpower of annoying freaking banter, which is probably our superpower too, to be honest.
Yeah, true.
But yeah. Yo, let me tell you about Oh my gosh, yeah, I could picture that being the end. Oh, we know how it's going to end now. We're just going to ride around the lowrider, be like, hey man, let me tell you the story. And then 20 minutes later, like, wait, what are you talking about? I'm done. Bullet through the brain. That's it.
Oh,
that's the secret weapon.
Dude.
That's the secret weapon they're going to unleash.
Tries to hit the reality stone, and like he keeps tapping on the stone to get it to activate, and it won't activate, and then it does, and then like every reality that Thanos goes to, there's like a different version of like Luis rolling up in the van. Or there's like another one where he's like in a jail cell or something, or goes on like Mars or something, and it's like it's completely empty. And then Thanos thinks he's finally away from Luis, and he's like, oh.
And here he comes riding up.
The silence, and then all of a sudden the Mars rover just comes bouncing, and like there's some hip hop playing over there. And you see Luis with his head out the window with like his like moon helmet to the side or something like that. Like, you know, with like the pimped out NASA suit going, what's up, yo? Hey, my homie Thanos, what's up, yo? Let me tell you about the story about me and Scott Lang, bro.
Yeah, that is the deep inside Luis's Infinity Stone.
Yes, there we go.
Giving him the ability to annoy, maximum annoy. That was definitely well. I was kind of glad that I was able to share my thoughts about Michael Douglas's horrible acting with your son and his friend Max, and now they are also not being swayed by this nonsense that Michael Douglas is a good actor. They can see through it. They know better. They know that the Crypt Keeper or even a skeleton you could buy at Walmart could do the same job as Michael Douglas as Hank Pym.
Dude, like
has he really been good at anything? Go back in time and like look through the movies that he's done and really look at the acting and tell me it's not horrible. Indecent Proposal, horrible. Oh my God!
No. He wasn't.
Get on the list.
He wasn't in Indecent Proposal.
Oh no, that wasn't.
Indecent Proposal was Robert Redford.
That's right.
Right. He was.
That's how bad he is. I confuse him with Robert Redford.
Disclosure or something like that with Demi Moore.
Disclosure, yes. Okay.
Yeah,
like I did not buy the fact that he was, spoiler alert, raped by Demi Moore. Don't buy it. Sorry. Nope. Didn't even buy that back then.
You don't buy
Sorry.
It? You don't
this
think
has become the shit on Michael Douglas show, apparently. I will die on that hill, my friend. I will die on that hill, and I will claim from the rooftops that Michael Douglas is a stain on the inside.
Well,
Michelle Pfeiffer was in the movie for like 3 minutes. Yeah, we got the original walls and broke the bullet. She's in for 3 minutes. That's it. Yeah, I could have woke up past days and done that.
Oh man. Well, hey, you know, there was another theory that we floated around about as far as the character of Hank Pym, that you know, Stan Lee probably could have played Hank Pym better, and actually would have been a little bit more, would have been more believable. But I could just picture Stan Lee going, "What the hell do you want me to do? You want me to go ahead and play Hank Pym? Get out of here! I like my cameos. It's good to go." I don't want to be bothered with this. Could you imagine? Oh. Yeah, but the funniest scenario would probably be like an end credit where like Stan Lee, like he finds the Infinity Gauntlet and he picks it up and all the stones are on. And he's like, "Oh, this is cool. Oh man, it lights up all different colors. I can't wait to show my grandkids this." It's like, "Hey, I wonder if I could snap my fingers." And he goes and he snaps his fingers, and then like the other half of the universe dies.
The other half is dead. Everyone's dead.
Oh
man!
Man.
Like, oh no!
What did I just do?
I did the wrong thing. I did a bad thing. Oops! Let me do it in reverse. So. Yeah, it was good times. Good times. You know,
better than
definitely was good.
Listen,
you know.
The funniest story is this. Okay. Here we are. We're watching the credits. Now, this is the only part of the movie that we're actually going to give away. Okay. Here we are. We're watching the credits. Poor Max and his expanding bladder, as he's trying to contain himself from laughing, has to go to the bathroom. So we're telling him to hold it, and he's going, "But I really got to pee." We're telling him to hold it. Like, dude, you're going to miss the scene. Right. You're going to miss the scene. We're telling him, no, you got to hold it. And, like, we're trying not to talk about pee because Max really has to go pee. And then all of a sudden, the very last scene comes. And, Carlos, if you would please explain to us the cataclysmic disappointment that it was for our listening public.
So it was an ant playing the drums. That's it. There's no mystical revelation, nothing to do with anything. And I felt poor Max's soul just leave his body as the end of the end scene that happened. He's like, I waited for this? Stupid ant playing drums? That's it? I was like, hey, they're not all winners. I thought it would have been better if they had Captain America come up again and be like, so you wasted your time once more. You should have learned last time. And then that would have been the ultimate troll job right there.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Oh, man. But I felt so bad for Max, but let me tell you, you know.
It made it funnier, actually. It made it much funnier because the actual scene was garbage. But the scenario surrounding it and the expanding bladder and the fact that we were the only, like, I think there was some other weird guy that stuck around. Everyone else left. And we're like, no, wait for it. Fucking ants playing the drums. Okay, we're done. Bye. Okay. All right, that was not worth it. And then Max was like, I really got to go now. I'm like, all right, let's come on. Hit the bathroom. Get it out of your system.
Yeah. I could just imagine it's like Max going in there and just like the sigh of relief or like, you know, in the act of just totally just start screaming and like, we waited all that time for this. For this. Oh, man.
Yeah, it was overall. The only thing that I wish they would have done, spoiler alert, is that happened early in the movie. Not at the
Possibly.
Like, if it was way earlier, then it would have been even better. All right, I'm done jumping on Michael Douglas. I'm done. Sorry, I had to get it out of my system.
So you're done?
It just bothers me.
You're positive?
Yes, I'm done. God, do you think he's going to... No, he can't make it come back in Avengers. Thank you, Dennis. You've done us all a favor.
Oh, man. So if you haven't gone and seen Ant-Man and the Wasp, yes, it's a great movie. Yes, definitely go and see it, despite Michael Douglas's Hank Pym. Yes, go and see it. I'm telling you, you will not be disappointed, and you will completely laugh your ass off when you see Luis and company and all the star cast from the first Ant-Man movie. It is funny as hell. We had a blast. Special shout out to Bill Garza for hooking us up with tickets to go see it last night. Dude, you're the man. We had a great time. So, yes, definitely go see it. Also, keep in mind, there are some rumors floating around about it. I'm going to debunk them all right about now.
Uh-oh.
Keep an open mind. This movie takes place directly after Civil War and does, in fact, tie in with Infinity War. And that's all I'm going to say. There's your stage. There's your setup. Now go and see it and fill in the blanks. All right?
And all right, just remember, after you watch that, you will forever picture Luis riding up to the side of you telling you an irrelevant story.
Yes.
Blathering on and on about nonsense. Which is pretty much what we do here.
I would love to have him roll up in that van and just be like, roll down the window and be like, what's up?
What's up? What do you think about Sam Darnold? Sam Darnold, yeah, he's going to be the quarterback for the Jets. What? What are you talking about, Luis? Why are you talking about Jet football? Oh, I don't know, man. Let me tell you about a story about my homeboy, Scott Lang. Shut up, Luis. All right.
I think one of these shows for the JFP in the future, I'm definitely gonna try to get my Luis on and stuff like that, and be like, "Yo, man, let me tell you the story about the Jet defense." And you got Leonard Williams. He roll up on there, and he'd be going and putting his hand in the dirt, and he'd be like, "Yo, man, I'm gonna run you over." And then offensive lineman looking at him like, "Bitch, you ain't going nowhere." And then we just start smacking one another, and then all of a sudden, Leo Williams just threw him to the ground, and then he just sacked the quarterback, and then he just stood up and just said, "Yes."
I am not dead. I just shot myself. You cannot do that to our faithful listeners because they will want to kill themselves too. Let's scrap that idea completely from our minds.
No, I don't know about that because I could definitely picture both Scotty Blackman and freaking C Swizzle falling out of their chairs laughing because now I can picture they're going to go and they're going to get like somewhere on YouTube a clip of like Luis going, what's that? Or doing like some sort of story and just laughing hysterical. It'll be friggin' hilarious. But
so
anyhow,
if we're going to do that,
coming
like
up
limit it to 30 seconds or something. I mean, 'cause I don't want anyone to actually kill themselves.
All right. So anyhow, all right. Listen, buddy, we're up against it. So give out all your social media information, and then we're going to talk about this awesome contest that we got going on with StatementGames.com.
All right. At CSS Ardina on Twitter. Facebook. Check out our page that continues to grow somehow. It's CNC Football Factory page. And that's pretty much it as far as my social media. And, of course, at CNC Jets Factor on the Twitter as well.
Yep, absolutely. And you can follow me at JetsFan0523. You know, you can shoot the show an email at thejetsfactor@gmail.com. But first things first, before we let all you guys go, this really cool contest that we got going on. I teased about this at the beginning of the show, and you know CJ always delivers. So here we are. The Jets Factor podcast has partnered up with StatementGames.com to introduce this massive sweepstakes that we got going on. We have 2 tickets up available for the Jets public. Yes, 2 tickets, 2 New York Jets home tickets, November 25th versus the New England Patriots, all right? We are giving them away. And one of you listeners out there could be the lucky winners of these tickets. And all you got to do to enter into the sweepstakes is send a text. Text the word Jets to the following number, 516-207-0905. When you text it, you will get a little prompt that will pop up. You're going to tap on that link. It's going to take you to StatementGames.com. All you got to do is enter your name, your email address. That is it. And you are lined up and entered into that sweepstakes. Don't forget to go check out StatementGames.com if you're into fantasy sports. They got a cool lineup. They got me hooked. That I go into their tournaments now almost daily when it comes to the Yankees. I can just imagine when football season comes around the kind of stuff that they're going to have. So definitely check out StatementGames.com. Text Jets to 516-207-0905. Get in on this sweepstakes, man. If you are a diehard Jets fan, you live in the tri-state area. Hell, if you live in the United States, you live in the world, and you're listening to the sound of my voice right now, 1, I applaud you. 2, get involved on this sweepstakes. Definitely. Get involved in it. We will be announcing the winner the week of Thanksgiving. Tentatively, it's for November 23rd, but we're definitely going to change that date. We will let you guys know when the new date's going to be. But I'm telling you, it's a great contest. Get involved with it. Go to StatementGames.com. Check it out. But most of all, don't forget to keep your eye on the Jets Factor podcast, as we're going to have some really cool, exciting stuff going on throughout the season. So we're excited about the opportunity to work with them. They're excited about working with us. You know, don't forget to check us out on thegruelingtruth.net, where legends speak. Don't forget to check us out on the UNB Sports Network. Joey Gucciardo and his crew over there, they're doing a great job, you know, including us in. They cover New York sports from top to bottom. So definitely go give them a check out. Carlos, any last words before we wrap this up, brother?
Yo, man, let me tell you about the story about my homeboy Scott Lang and his girlfriend. Bye, CJ.
All right, guys. This has been the Jets Factor podcast on SoundCloud.com. We thank you all for listening. We'll see you guys when we see you guys. Hey, Jets Nation. CJ the Painkiller. Wrong one.